Hey everyone, welcome back to Todos Santos. This is episode 4, and today we're going to be creating kind of an extension to the old town that we made the last 2 episodes. And this is going to be kind of a slum area, a little bit more of a low income area. As you can see here, it's physically down, like beneath the rest of the old town, sort of in this like beach shoreline area. And this is just like a lot of other stuff with the old town is taken directly from old San Juan in Puerto Rico. And there is a kind of a poor area underneath the old town here that you can kind of look down on from the walls. And it's pretty cool. It's very visually interesting with lots of colorful buildings and very similar to the rest of the old town, but just a little bit more rundown and kind of more taken over by informal housing. And so you saw the basic road network there. It's just one road and then a few dirt roads coming off of that. And it terminates up here in this little cul-de-sac, which we'll detail later. But right now, I have a lot of trouble with these crosswalks. And that's really just something that happens in this game in general, especially with Roads United, because I'm using the Roads United, I forget which one it is, but it's one of the North American style roads version. And it's pretty much essential for me because when the roads don't have the yellow lines and stuff, that just really gets to me when I'm trying to create a city that would realistically have that sort of road pattern. But the side effect of that is that the crosswalk remover mod, the one that visually removes crosswalks, doesn't work. It's not compatible with that, with the textures that it comes with. So I have to deal with these. And I do that mostly here with some damage decals, just kind of like conveniently placed over top of the crosswalks. But I also in a couple places use poppable asphalt, which is generally the best way because it blends in with the road texture, but it's not always possible. And so now I'm kind of creating the main downtown, I guess, of this neighborhood. It has that old church there and then a supermarket next to it. So I guess they don't live in a food desert, which is pretty nice for them. And then this kind of ugly modern apartment there, which I think it's ugly, but it looks pretty awesome. So this is kind of like the main drag here. And so there are a lot of formal buildings or formal housing buildings there, as you can see, like the green one there. And then I'm also putting down some of these shacks, which I imagine would be either modified versions of older buildings that were originally built as housing, or they'd be built by inhabitants who would want to come and live here without paying for the property. And I'm imagining that this area would be kind of just ignored by the government. Because they want to spend most of their resources here in beautifying the rest of the old town up top, because that's what attracts the tourists. And because this is both physically separated and culturally quite different from the rest of it, they'd kind of just let it be. They don't really have to worry about it too much. So that's why I decided to have these kinds of shacks and things to look like there are squatters and other people living there. I didn't want it to be too horrible though, like it's not the worst neighborhood in the world, but it's just generally fairly poor and not as well kept as the rest of the neighborhood up above. And now you can see a little detailing here, but most of the rest of this episode is going to be kind of placing buildings and stuff like that. And we don't finish this whole area down here, which you can't see right now, but I think at some point here I jump back and you can kind of see the whole area. But we finish this kind of this larger area here with these 2 or 3 tiers. And I'm using a lot of the same buildings that I used up top, because I'm imagining that these neighborhoods would have originally been developed around the same time, so they'd have a similar style of architecture, but I imagine that this one was less dense. So that's why there are these spaces where these informal buildings have kind of grown naturally while they've been built, but the layout has kind of grown naturally into that. And I did run into problems. You can see the shacks that are like behind the church there. A lot of them don't have road connections because I'm placing them with Move It, which is pretty tough in terms of getting services and stuff. And I mentioned this in the first episode, building the castle. We had all those buildings in the castle that weren't being serviced by the cemeteries and stuff. And that kind of same thing happened here. So as I've been playing the game, I've been noticing as buildings start to get the no services notifications, I just delete them. And it ends up, they look fine. I mean, it doesn't look like there are any gaping holes or anything. So I think it works out okay, starting with putting as many buildings as I can and then deleting all the ones that really don't function within the tenets of the game. And so here I thought it was kind of cool to have these houses like built into the hill there. And then, so you can see the roofs there, so it's kind of like looking out over the water. But then they have these informal buildings on top that have kind of just grown over them, or they appear to have grown over them, which I think is pretty cool. Now I had some trouble kind of figuring out what to do in these central areas. Up in the original part of the old town, it was pretty easy to just either put some pathways, a parking lot, or some trees, but I didn't want it to be overly developed here, so I ended up just filling it in. In that instance, I had some fencing and a little bit of grass, and I kind of followed that pattern for the most part all over, because I wanted it to look like some of these buildings are taken care of fairly nicely, because there have been like families or individuals who have lived here for a long time and have quite a bit of pride in their house. And then there are some that really just are covered in trash and dirt and are just not very well maintained. So I wanted to have kind of a tale of like, not a tale of two cities, but a tale of two kind of cultures, and that would kind of fit with the fact that one is prevailing and one of them is that it's just kind of it's a place to live, and that's really it. It's not like people don't really take pride in their house and stuff like that. But some of them do. And now here there's just a little bit of an industrial area. I just thought that kind of fit, like historically there would have been a little bit of industry here to provide, or people would have moved here to work for industry that was down here. And I think it kind of fits now visually, because it doesn't look very nice. So I'm imagining that these would be like abandoned factories, or ones that are not factories but warehouses, something like that, where maybe there's a business there, or maybe there isn't. As you can see, this one, there's probably not much going on there because people just dump their trash there. And then there's another church over here, and I kind of wanted that church and the other one down in the main area to be kind of almost tourist attractions. Like, people would brave going down into the bad area of town to visit these places, just because they're so cool. And again, I put a lot of these shacks around, and I do end up deleting a lot of them, and I think it looks a little too busy with too many of them. So I think pulling some of those out worked nicely. And I just like that fence there a lot. I think that fits really nicely. The asset is really cool. So I do a lot of this, like clipping multiple copies of the same building within each other, and I think it kind of allows some variety while keeping these nice, I mean the texture in that is like perfect, keeping these nice textures and the nice models on the buildings while adding some variety, because there's not a lot on the workshop that really fits. Although I did find I don't remember exactly what it's called, I think it's like Shantytown or something like that. I found some assets. It's actually quite a lot of like houses mostly. And they fit perfectly. I don't have them at this point, but I just found those recently, so I'm going to go back in and add some of those. And I do use those up top in like the main area of this island that we're working on in a future episode, which will be coming in quite a while actually, because I have a huge backlog of footage. So I'm going to try, what I might do is try to do some episodes without commentary and that are maybe a little shorter, because that cuts the time it takes me to make an episode at least in half, probably more than that. Because really doing the voiceover and editing it down to as short as it can be, it takes a long time. And it's fun, but it's just really hard for me to find time to do these voiceovers, because I don't really have a stable place where I can just sit down and do voiceover without any noise pollution or distractions or anything like that. So yeah, I might try just to get going on this series a little bit more. I might try to do that maybe the next episode, I'm not sure, which I think would work nicely, because it's a pretty small, pretty focused episode and I don't have tons to say about it, so I might do that. But I think it's one that I'm pretty happy with. We kind of get away from buildings and into some more infrastructure, and it's pretty cool. So now I didn't really know what to do this area, so I just decided that the people that lived here wouldn't either, and they would just kind of let it be wild, and I think that looks pretty cool. I'm actually using the cliff texture there that's popping out. That's normally very annoying, but I think it works really nicely here, because it's kind of like this just one little rocky outcropping that's kind of been naturally left there. But at this point I don't have any small rocks or boulders or anything, so I just cover that clipping up with a bush. There's a nice little yard there. Like I said, some of these places are a little nicer than others. Now we're kind of switching gears and we're going down to the waterfront, and I just do this to get that more of a sheer cliff there, and it looks pretty bad currently, but we do go back, here we go, and we put some of these cliff rocks as a base. These work really nicely just to cover up any weird like shapes in the terrain when you have terraforming like that with roads. They don't look great up close, so then I come back with these surface rocks and I put these down to give it a really nice texture, because these look so great. And then I kind of fill out that whole area with some more rocks. I imagine that this area would be kind of like within the water would be like a really rocky area, and then over to on the left on screen now, you can't really see it, but there's like a beach area. So I imagine there's like this rocky area that hasn't been, it takes a long time for everything to erode. And then over, there on the right, you'll see that there's going to be a beach over there at some point in the future. Now I'm filling it in with some, I guess it's seaweed. I'm just using this grass prop. I think it looks pretty nice from above. And now, so this area here, we're going to make a little bit of a beach. I'm imagining that this is like, it's not the greatest beach ever, and because of its location, people don't really go to it too much in terms of being a visitor. So this would really be kind of a locals thing. And then we jump away from that and we build this little, they do have one park here in this neighborhood, so it's not all bad. They have this little park. But going back to that beach, that's something that we actually finish up in the next episode, where we kind of go over to the right of what we're, I guess that would be to the east. Kind of mixing up my directions. I think to the east. So next episode we do kind of a not unique, but a kind of a standalone project. And then at the end of that episode, we fill in some gaps that we have in this slum area. Alright, so now I figured that people would need a way to get from this neighborhood up to the rest of the old town or vice versa. And in the game, people are basically walking all the way around and over to the road just on the sidewalk. And it just looks ridiculous. There are just hordes of people going up this like little tiny road with nothing around it. So I wanted to make a staircase here so to at least alleviate that a little and be fairly realistic, I think. I know in real life there's actually a road that is a little closer, and it goes kind of in the middle of one of those big, I don't know what it's called, but it's like the little triangular shaped things in the castle wall that kind of bump out. I'm not sure exactly what that's called. There's a road that like goes in that, and then it goes like underneath the wall and it comes out into this area, and that's really cool. But I didn't really I don't know how I would do that in this game with the way the networks work and everything. It's definitely doable, but I don't know, I just didn't do it. So I just did this staircase, and people aren't using it right now, but eventually off camera I kind of fiddle around with the pedestrian paths, and they do eventually start using this, so that's pretty cool. There are still a lot of people that go up and down that little road out there though, which is kind of weird. So I might have to figure out something with that. But for now, we are just about done with this episode, so enjoy the cinematics. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in episode 5 of Todos Santos. Catch you later. Bye.